What's up, guys? It is time for our next installment of our air and water notes. We left off on this slide yesterday. These are the 7 different water quality properties that can be tested for. I discussed these briefly yesterday, so make sure you know what all of these are. Surface water quality, that's the quality of the water at the surface. It's pretty self-explanatory. Anything that runs off of the streets or is in streams or lakes or ponds is susceptible to water quality or poor water quality, especially in and around cities, because pollution can settle onto the roadways or any sort of flat, impervious artificial structure, and anytime it rains, it will run off into the nearest body of water. That's why a lot of times rivers that flow through big cities tend to be more highly polluted than rivers that do not. Sometimes cities will build what are called sediment ponds, and these are specific ponds that will trap runoff water so that it doesn't contaminate the local streams and lakes. So that's one way that cities can manage their water quality pollution. All right, so that's what happens in cities. In rural areas or agricultural areas, you can have what's called eutrophication. And this is a huge deal here in Ohio, especially northwest in like the Toledo area and Lake Erie. This is when you have too many nutrients in the water, and that's usually caused by fertilizer. Farmers will spread fertilizer on their fields, and not all of it will seep into the ground. So anytime it rains, all of that excess fertilizer gets into the waterway, and that can cause a massive bloom of algae, and also something called hypoxia, which I'll talk about here in just a second. So eutrophication, that's when there's too many nutrients in the water caused by fertilizer. All right, hypoxia. The Environmental Protection Agency defines hypoxia as having low oxygen. So there's not enough oxygen in the water, not enough dissolved oxygen in the water to support life. So what ends up happening in these lakes that are going through eutrophication, like Lake Erie, there's tons of fertilizer in the water. Then all of the algae will start to bloom to eat up all that fertilizer. And once the fertilizer is gone, there's not enough nutrients left to support all that algae life. And so all the algae starts to die. And as the algae dies and decays, it uses up the oxygen, the dissolved oxygen that's in the water. And so you end up with these huge, massive mass deaths in these bodies of water. In addition to that, sometimes the algae species themselves can cause lots of pollution. There are some that give off neurotoxins. So any animal that swims through the cloud of algae will die. There have been recorded mass deaths of dolphins off the coast of Florida due to red algae blooms that are caused by this eutrophication. So it's really just a horrendous chain effect. So eutrophication, too many nutrients. Hypoxia, not enough oxygen. And as soon as that oxygen level starts dropping, fish start dying off in huge numbers. So here's just kind of a summary of the previous couple of slides. I know there was a lot to take in there. So eutrophication, again, that's too many nutrients. It's caused by fertilizers, the discharge, the inappropriate treatment of sewage, all kinds of industrial activities, and population growth. Now, if we talk about sewage and population growth, more people equals more poo. More poo equals more sewage. And if we have more sewage than our sewers can handle, a lot of that ends up getting discharged into the local rivers and streams, which makes things very nasty indeed. Back in 1974, Congress passed something called the Safe Drinking Water Act, and it was signed into law. This is a federal law that ensures the quality of Americans' drinking water. Now, unfortunately, since the 1970s, this law has been amended and weakened many times over the course of the last 50 years or so. So there have been a lot of companies that have gotten away with poisoning well water, they've poisoned groundwater, and so unfortunately this is not as strict a law as it probably should be. It's supposed to protect drinking water and its sources, so lakes, rivers, any kind of reservoir, springs, and underground water sources. The only thing it does not protect are private wells that serve fewer than 25 individuals. So I know some of you live on properties where you have your own well water. If that is the case, you or your parents are responsible, whoever is in charge of that is responsible for testing the water on a regular basis to make sure it doesn't have any contaminants in it. And there's different water tests that you can get, I think, for free from the EPA or from the state, and they can talk you through how to do that. All right, some threats to our drinking water. Obviously, there's a lot of them, unfortunately. Improperly disposed of chemicals, or, if like a factory is neglecting to dispose of their chemicals properly, any kind of animal waste. So when we watched that video, Last Call at the Oasis, there were lots and lots of threats to the drinking water there. There were pesticides, human waste. We saw that when I showed you guys that video about all the feces and dead bodies in the Ganges River. Any kind of waste injected underground can end up in our drinking water. And then sometimes naturally occurring substances can get into our drinking water. And they might not be harmful necessarily to the environment, but they're still harmful to us. Like certain algae or single-celled organisms that can give us diarrhea, things like that. All right, and that is that in terms of the notes. Now, these next few videos are all about the Flint crisis in Michigan, and it is still ongoing. It is an ongoing situation, but the news broke several years ago that basically the entire city of Flint was getting lead poisoning from their government water, from the water source that was leading into their houses. So definitely make sure you watch these 3 videos. They are very interesting, and it's kind of infuriating that things still aren't being taken care of for these people. All right, well, that's it for these notes. I will keep you up to date on what's going on. Make sure you're staying on top of your work, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.